Alright guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to set up your camera to start getting some awesome time lapses. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to check is your battery level. Make sure you got a nice fully charged battery. The last thing you want to happen is to have your battery die halfway through a huge time lapse. That's super frustrating. I've had it happen before, so make sure we're starting with a fully charged battery. I also want you to, if you can, I want you to use a big, meaty, beefy tripod, heavy duty like this one. Not one of those little plastic ones. Those are okay for normal photography, but for a time lapse, we want that camera to not move at all. So a big, meaty, beefy one like this is really going to help us out. Obviously, we're going to be shooting in full manual exposure, so we want to make sure our mode wheel is on M. And let's just check on the back of our camera. So for this shot inside, I got to be shooting at 1 second at f29 ISO 1600. That's a pretty slow shutter speed, but I'm okay with that because I got the big tripod. You decide on the exposure that works best for you for where you're shooting. Just make sure you're in full manual, no auto anywhere, even in the ISO. White balance is something we haven't talked a ton about. That's this one right here. And what you want to do to set your white balance is just come in and press this WB button. You got a lot of different options here. Don't use auto though, because auto may change throughout the time lapse, and then your time lapse is going to have a weird color shift to it, and you don't want that. So choose the one that works best for you. If you're shooting in the sun, you'll obviously choose sunny, and if you're in the shade, choose shade and cloudy. And these are light bulbs that you use at home, and these are the kind of lights we have at the school. So, and then don't worry about these last two, but for me, I'm going to go ahead and set mine to fluorescent because I'm shooting here in my classroom. One other thing I want you to do before you get started is focus before you start your time lapse. Get your camera nice and in focus, and then reach around here and turn your autofocus off. Last thing you want is your camera trying to refocus in between shots. That's going to mess up a time lapse real fast. So with your autofocus turned off, you solve that problem. Okay, last thing, and the big question is, should you shoot RAW or should you shoot JPEG? So a couple of things to think about when you're deciding on RAW versus JPEG is your lighting, is the number of images you're going to take, is the time between shots, and the number of shots you're going to take. For example, I have my camera set to JPEG right now, and I can only take 486 photos. If I change this to RAW, you see I can now only take 136 photos. So if I needed a 300 shot time lapse, my decision has already been made. I cannot shoot in RAW unless I go get a different memory card. Another thing to think about is your lighting. If you've got good, consistent lighting, especially backlighting, meaning the lighting is coming from behind you, the photographer, you could probably get away with shooting in JPEG. But if you've got kind of tough lighting and difficult lighting, or you're shooting into the sun, then RAW is probably a better choice for you. So that's another thing to think about when choosing RAW versus JPEG. And the last thing is how much time you have between shots. If you're doing a real fast time lapse with an interval of only 1 or 2 or 3 seconds between shots, your camera may not be able to write the RAW files to the memory card fast enough. And so you might end up having some shots be skipped while you're waiting for your camera to catch up with what you're doing. So a lot of things to keep in mind when deciding on shooting RAW versus JPEG. The space you have on your memory card, the time between shots, your lighting, and the number of photos you're going to take. So keep all that stuff in mind as you're trying to decide. That's pretty much it though, guys. All you got to do now is hook up your intervalometer, which we watched how to do that in another video, and you're pretty much set and ready to go.